So 4 principles as we finish before we have some questions. Treat your family like your family and your business like a business. Just little tools here, and I'll tell you a story about that. Think about merit. Your blood, your DNA can provide you an opportunity, but what you do with that opportunity is the absolute key. Predictability. How do we use predictability to help in our family businesses? And then trust. How do we build it? There is a market in Connecticut called Stu Leonard's. And I'll tell you this story. This is a peculiar story. If you don't remember anything from this morning, literally, please remember the tool that I'll tell you about in this story. This is the most effective tool that I've seen in the real conflicts of family business. Okay. Stu Leonard, this is not a breach of confidentiality. I don't work for this family. He's told this story publicly, just so you know that. Confidentiality is important to me. Stu Leonard and his brother owned a grocery store chain, so two stores in Connecticut. Very high-end, very high-profit stores. He bought his brother out, so it was just him now. He's in his 60s. He has 4 children. Stu Jr., his oldest son, Tom, and then 2 daughters. Tom and Stu Jr. were hired as managers of his 2 stores. They're in their 30s and one of them's 40. Okay? The daughters are raising children, married, good families. Stu hires an advisory board. Okay? That's one thing that we consultants will say often. Think about an advisory board. Think about independent people that come. I sit on boards, right? Come, bring people to give you objective advice. Listen to them if you want. Don't listen to them if you don't want. But Stu hired an advisory board. And the advisors looked at his business, and after about a year, they said, "You need to fire your son, Tom." And he said, "What?" And they said, "Look, you hired us to give you advice. The advice we're giving you is fire Tom." And Stu said, "Why?" And he said, "He's not good at it. He's not good at that job. Somebody else could do it better for the same price or less. You asked us for advice. Here's the advice." So Stu thought about it, and what he did, here's the tool again. Forget everything else, but remember this story. And he called his son into his office, and he put 2 cowboy hats on his desk. Stu's got a peculiar sense of humor. And he said, "Tom, I called you here as the chairman of the board. I'm putting on my chairman of the board hat." Really put it on. "You're fired." He said, "You take on goals, you don't hit the goals, you make excuses for not hitting the goals, you go on vacation too much, your best people leave. You're fired. You're not good at this." And then he said, "Now I'm taking off my chairman of the board hat, and I'm putting on my father's hat. You just lost your job. What's going on? What's wrong with you?" And Tom, it's a peculiar story. It really happened. Now, Tom, I also asked about this situation, and I said, "Tom, how did that feel?" And Tom said, when he said that, I couldn't even speak. He said, "I was so torn up with emotion." And I said, "You were upset?" He said, "I was thrilled. I was happy." And I said, "Didn't you tell him?" And he said, "Finally, my dad said, 'What is wrong with you?'" And Tom said, "I'm glad you fired me. I hate working for you. I'm a grown man. I got an MBA. I have 4 kids of my own. I'm on a board. I run the store. You come in. You tell me it's not good enough. It's like I'm a teen." He said he just started kind of regurgitating a lot of emotion. And Stu now said, "Why didn't you tell me this?" Now keep in mind, as I'm going to step back from the story, watch what's happening. Father, chairman of the board. Father, chairman of the board. Son, manager. Son, manager. "Why didn't you tell me this?" "I love you as a father. You're a wonderful father. I just hate working for you." Right? I didn't want to disappoint you. I've always wanted to make you happy. But I don't really like what I do. I'm glad you fired me. Stu, when he heard the story, and when he told this story, he said, I felt horrible. He said, I felt like I had completely failed Tom. Because as he said, no father with his little baby in his arms thinks, how can I, manipulate and control this thing, and make it do what I want and make sure he's unhappy? No, we don't think that. He said, I had lost track that this was an individual. I thought of him more as kind of as he put it, a character in my play. So he said, well, what are you going to do, Tom? I'm not giving you your job back, right? I don't know which hat that's on, And he said, well, I'm moving to Richmond, Virginia. I'm starting a produce market. I've got it all set. And Stu said, well, why would you do that? I love the produce business. I don't like the grocery business. I love the produce business. And he said, I don't need your money. I don't want you to invest in it. I'm going to do it on my own. I've been saving money. You can't have a seat on the board. It's my deal. Eventually, Stu did invest in it, by the way, but they don't talk about that very much. So you see what we're dealing with? You think about how many times you talk with your brother, your sister, your father, your mother, your cousins, your managers, your co-owners in a day. Think of how many times you're taking a hat off and putting another one on, and taking a hat off and putting another hat on. Okay? From now on, I'm going to make you all promise, even though you're not going to promise, but use that idea. When someone comes into your office, whether it's your father or your son, your daughter, your sister, your brother, and they bring up something that's emotional, you say, are we talking now as partners? Are we talking now as siblings in the family realm? Or are we talking as operators, business people? We need to get that straight first before we start to talk, because there's different goals. Everybody has pretty much the same priority. The families I work with have their family as the highest priority. But that's a long-term priority. Sometimes on a daily basis, the successful operation of the business is the highest priority because it doesn't put at risk the family. So I hope that's helpful. Stu is a wonderful guy. He's strange. But it's such an awkward, peculiar example that's so helpful, that helps clients that I work with all over the place.